Hello and welcome to the Leaders Lounge podcast. My name is Simon Cohen, founder of Cohesis, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Matt Seeds, Managing Director of Inspired IT. So to kick things off, Matt, please tell us a little bit about yourself, Inspired IT. What do you do? Maybe how long you've been in business.
As you mentioned, my name is Matt. I'm the founder or owner of Inspired IT. We started almost to the day 9 years ago. So it's been a good 9 years. So predominantly we're a managed service business. We're doing elements of cybersecurity. We do a lot of 365 deployments. We service on-demand clients and projects and actually do a lot more hardware as well than I was expecting to do when I first set up the business. So we do like a typical MSP, but as a modern day MSP, you need to factor in a lot of security in there as well now. So we've got a good cyber as a service product that we're offering against frameworks. So we're definitely evolving as the requirements change as well.
So there's a lot there, and congratulations on being in business for 9 years. That's a remarkable achievement. What inspired you to start Inspired IT, and how would you say Inspired IT sets itself apart from other companies in this space?
It's something that I've always wanted to do. I mean, my dad sort of owned a business, and a few of my friends or school friends and sort of our school friends had businesses as well. So, I mean, I moved to Perth in 2012, and I'd sort of had really good experience in Guernsey, is where I'm originally from, and sort of working for internal IT, accountant firms, banking, then MSPs locally, then helped grow a friend's business considerably in my time in Guernsey. And then I sort of moved here and worked for a few MSPs, and it was always in the back of my mind. And my wife was pregnant at the time, and I was like, look, it's now or in theory after now.
Yeah.
So we had a bit of money in the bank and took the plunge and did it. And it was it's definitely fun. I mean, it's exciting starting certainly a new business and with a kid that's sort of 3 months old. At that time, we had sort of enough money in the bank for sort of 6 months for me not to really take a wage, but took the plunge and decided to do it. And so in that sort of first year, I knew that obviously starting a business, you need to go out and network. You need to build your network, and obviously not being born in Perth, you don't really have a network. So I sort of said to the wife, I said, I'll be out. I'm going to be saying yes to everything. So any meeting or event, I would say yes. So I went to everything. So I didn't sort of see her too much in the evenings, but it established my network and really good relationships. And I learned a lot as well. So that was the start. So, and then obviously just myself working from home.
Yeah. And it's a hard thing, isn't it? Because, I mean, you've been here longer than me. I landed the end of 2017, but I think when I landed, I knew 2 people here. Yeah. And so building that network, and Perth with its location is remote, it is distant, and it is hard to establish and build that network and to build that trust. And when I set up Cohesis, when I founded Cohesis, it was exactly the same thing. You know, you took on pieces of work that you could just do just to build a reputation and just to see where it would lead. Who was your first client?
I actually can't remember. I was lucky. I reached out to a few vendors and partners that I'd worked with, and they sort of referred some work. And I'd have to actually check. It's probably I'd have to actually see my first ever ticket. I can't actually remember which one it was, but I'd have to check. But yeah, I don't actually know. We were lucky. Well, so I was lucky. I went out and picked up quite a few people around 365 and small businesses at sort of networking events and things like that. So it sort of grew from there. And say some of those clients I literally picked up very early on, I'd say within the first month or two, actually still clients. So and then they've grown considerably. And again, a lot of those people I initially met as well, they were sort of starting businesses, and some of those businesses are 80, 100 staff now, close to 200. So we've been able to grow with them as well. And I think that sort of is quite a nice journey because again, if they grow, we grow. So yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. For me, I got the opportunity to respond to a quote for doing a piece of IT consulting work. And we hadn't really set the business up properly yet. So we kind of had a name, we kind of had an ABN, but it hadn't done anything yet. We just about got a bank account, realized that we'd won it. And then all of a sudden, that was our first piece of work. So we kind of like, before we had a business, we actually had a client before we had a business. And that kind of gave me the thing that, okay, maybe we could do this, you know what I mean? And
so you hadn't resigned yet from that? So you were
so no, well, I had, but we were still thinking about how to set up and kind of what to do and what have you. But that gave me the push to take the leap that actually we could do this. And what I was in the process of taking on a contract, actually, that was going to kind of like tide me over whilst we kind of set it all up. And then and all of a sudden I was doing 2 or 3 things. And then I thought, right, okay, this is it. Actually, if nothing else is going to give me a sign, this is the sign. And so all of a sudden we started to build a network in local government, and that's how it worked for us, at least. But I can remember that feeling, seeing the piece of paper saying that you'd want it, thinking, oh my God, this is real. Like, you know, we've moved to a new country. We've actually got an opportunity here. So unlike you, it was very much a case of, okay, how much can we kind of like, you know, afford to give it a go for? And so we had exactly, you know, very similar conversations to what you've done. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's a leap of faith, and ultimately you have to back yourself. I mean, I've got sort of 20 plus years experience, so I knew the ins and outs of IT support and what a client needed. So I was just sort of leveraged that, and I'll say quite lucky in certain areas. But then you have to make your own luck. You've got to be in the right time and right place. And again, one thing that no one will ever tell me is that I didn't try. I absolutely sort of work hard and then just and keep ever evolving. And when I first wrote down the plan, it was like, say, wrote it on 1A4, wrote our values, what I wanted the business to be after 5 years, how many staff, what our key focuses were, and when we hit those goals every 5 years. And I'm a big believer of sort of writing down the targets, and then you make those active decisions based on those targets. So and that's worked really well.
Yeah, absolutely. And very similar to you, my kind of phrase that I use for myself is that I didn't want to die not knowing that, you know, not having given it a go and not knowing whether I could do it. So yeah, very, very similar. So over the 9 years you've been in business, obviously you've grown. Tell me about that growth journey, like from where you were when you started it to where you are now. What's it been like to grow a business from nothing to obviously something that's fairly substantial in 9 years?
I mean, the first years, I was like a deer in headlights, to be honest, just trying to learn everything and understand. I'd never done reconciliation in an accounting package before. That I didn't really necessarily, I mean, I knew the idea of sort of sales orders, purchase orders, but then you're accountable for it. Is another thing. And also you want to sort of get it done professionally. I always try and do things correctly, and I didn't want to run that all out of an Excel spreadsheet as an example. So wanted to bring in the right products. So it started off really, like I say, in the evenings I'll be sort of doing all the reconciliation, and I actually had quite thorough enjoyment around seeing the green tick with zero and stuff like that, feeds and stuff like
it's
that.
It's the little things.
And then you watch your money come in. So no, that was nice. And then it sort of grew. I had my first employee, I think it was around 18 months. We brought somebody came in as a part-time, and then didn't necessarily want to sort of work from home anymore, so then went to a shared office space in Aussie Park, and that sort of then really from there I started meeting people, and obviously other businesses that had sort of really didn't want to work at home but were also growing, and some of those people I still use now for our services. So and good mates with, so that was a good time. And then it just sort of grew from that. We've grown sort of anywhere between 40 to 70% revenue every year for the last sort of 6 years, 7 years. We've pulled it back a little bit the last couple, because it's to have that continuous growth during that time. It also brings challenges within the business. You've also got to maintain your processes, your applications, you've got to have the right skill set internally. And obviously, ultimately, we're a service business. So you've got to maintain that service. And I mean, through that growth, you obviously have those natural dips, but ultimately we always try and pride ourselves on service, and that's how we've got referred ultimately.
Yeah, and that's actually the next question. So how have you, so obviously you've spoken about change and growth and dips and what have you. So how have you managed to maintain high levels of customer service whilst you've been scaling and growing? Because obviously when you grow, there's growing pains, people come, people go, and you mentioned processes and applications. So how have you kind of like manage that through to maintain consistently, and I'm guessing improved your levels of customer service?
Yeah, I mean, which we have. I mean, we've got a lot more data points, I suppose, against the I suppose the clients that we serve and the tickets that we do. I mean, I think when I first started the business, I knew that I had a growth plan. So obviously, I built the business to be able to scale and brought in probably applications that I didn't need at that point, but I also knew that I'll be 5-star, 6-star, 7-star, 8, 9, 10, so forth. So I needed to get those in early on. So as soon as I had extra cash in the bank and was inferior in a profit, then I would invest in that within the systems or something to scale, and then it sort of just grew from there, really. And I always got to, and again, another thing I got told is to sort of always build a business to sell it. So keep it clean, which has been really good advice. And like I say, I was each to their own, but I keep everything separate and keep it professionally, because you could get, I mean, everyone's got a figure, I suppose, but someone you could randomly come out and go, do you want that? And it's like, well, I'd have to pull out my airplane out of the books or whatever it may be. Not that I've got an airplane, but just keep it clean.
No, absolutely. So talking of what advice you got from friends, one thing that a friend said to me one time, and this is a local government, a friend who works in local government, says that, people just expect IT to be like water. And I said to him, well, what do you mean? And he says, well, people turn on the tap and they expect water to come out. They just expect IT to just work. And it becomes a problem when it doesn't. You turn on the tap and there's no water. It all of a sudden becomes quite a big problem and bigger than maybe what it should do. But that expectation is, that high expectation is, technology breaks, things go wrong, there's complexity. It's not just a tap kind of thing. How do you manage that expectation, that high level of expectation in the real world, so that when things go wrong, people think, oh, okay, we understand. What do you do to manage customer expectation in that way?
I mean, it starts with getting the right clients on your books and the ones that you want to partner with. I mean, I always sort of talk about it's a two-way relationship. So again, yes, they're going to expect things from us, but we also expect things from the clients. And it's also trying to find, and again, we've got our profile of our ideal client, and it's clients that are respectful towards and understanding towards IT. But it's not perfect. IT isn't. We're not also perfect, so we're going to make mistakes, and also the client is as well. So and then you've got also technology and infrastructure inside of that as well. So there's a lot of different parts. I mean, my sort of going back and reflecting on sort of that question, sort of 15 years ago, 17 years ago, when you had it full on internal structure, and that was the only thing. How often DNS would go down, or DHCP, or networking, or Exchange. But now it's just it's almost, you're assuming it's going to be there, which is great. But then also the reliance on the businesses is far greater than it ever has been now. So some of our stuff is out of our control, because obviously with cloud coming in 365, like a lot of it isn't. You can't control that now, so you're part of a bigger ecosystem or whatever it may be. So sometimes we're in the hands of these massive partners, but then the uptime is far greater. But I think it's certainly understanding and having a conversation, and saying, just having the right clients on board, and having those sort of conversations, because we can't be, are we responsible for everything? No, but there's things that we can control that can help that. But I don't know if that answers your question or in a roundabout way.
No, it's fine. And I suppose on that, how have you seen the shift? And obviously, I suppose it started off gradually and it's gone more and more, but the shift from on-premise infrastructure architecture to the cloud, how have you found that internally? How easy has it been to cross-train, upskill, and kind of satisfy the market demand for the transition to cloud, as what it seems to be progressing these days?
I mean, I'm trying to think how long 365 has been around for. I mean, I'm sort of just off the top of my head. So say if you go back 15 years, where it's just starting to sort of come out, there was a lot of hesitancy and things like that. Then when I started my business 9 years ago, it was still, I would say, probably 1 in 3 would go for it, whereas the others would prefer still on sites or on-prem. So now we don't generally take on any clients that have on-prem Exchange. I've lost way too many years of my life supporting and recovering Exchange servers. So that's a nice sort of point to just put in the cloud, and we don't have that sort of responsibility on recovering mailboxes. And like I say, now that is the automatic sort of go-to. And I think businesses have got sort of more an understanding of the subscription costs, the month-to-month costs and things like that. And then you're factoring that into the businesses as well. So in some ways it's good because you don't need the cash up front and you can just build that into the reoccurring model. But it's less of an issue now. I still come across some sort of people or businesses that still sort of question around the security of the cloud. And then again, I mean, it's going back a few years, we'd always talk about, well, what's more secure? Is it the sort of the server that's been sitting underneath the stairs for 8 years, not been patched, or a server that's in the cloud or behind Microsoft's infrastructure that's got multiple redundancies and it's patched and it's secure? So we get less of those.
Yeah, indeed. And what I found as well is that local government, especially local government or other organizations that are in highly compliant, that have to comply with a high level of compliance, were a lot more resistant about moving to Microsoft 365 for the ownership and control perspective. They can understand the ease of use and they can understand the CapEx versus OpEx discussion. Like, they don't need to kind of like, provide their own infrastructure, servers, power, etc. But it's that ownership and control. And it seems as though, I think I've noticed in the last couple of years, maybe 2-3 years or so, that kind of wall has relented a little bit. And they thought, well, actually, you know what, maybe we have reached a level now whereby we can trust the security aspect, or it's actually no different kind of thing. And many,
or better.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, but with that, I would agree that yes, in many cases it is. But then I mean, I don't know what you think about this, but I think sometimes it tips the other way, that some clients will say, oh, we're in the cloud, it's all safe because everyone's got ISO this and what have you. But they're the ones that actually share their passwords around or have a password book or what have you, know what I mean? And don't have they believe that they can just rely on the cloud and they're in the cloud, so everything's going to be safe and secure, but they don't have the internal processes that kind of also are required to provide security. I mean, what do you think about that? Do you agree, or do you find that
internal processes have to keep up with the business needs or requirements? And if we're talking sort of government directly, obviously there's certain requirements from a tenders like ISO requirement or process in there. I think one of the easiest things is to align a business to a framework, because then you're managing those controls and things like that. So it just makes life a lot easier to reference. Whereas if we're going out saying, oh, if I go out and say, like, do you need antivirus? And it's like, well, why? Is this, or if you need antivirus because you need to align to this framework, then it makes an easier sort of talk. I mean, again, sort of going back to sort of making it easy, going back a few years to enable MFA or retention policies.
The battle.
It's a tick box and it's done. And in most occasions, it's done by default now. So those sort of things. I remember doing a quote many years ago before I started Inspired. And it was around, it was like 25-30K to do to set up multi-redundancy in AD and multi-factor or whatever it may be. And now it's tick.
Yeah, but going back, the battles that I know that you must have had, because I know I've had them, like from talking from a governance perspective about getting clients to understand the benefits of MFA and actually moving towards MFA. And as you say, that's part of the evolution, is that I think there has been an uplift in understanding about what's required, because trying to explain to some clients that it's really important that you do this and not landing, to now it's like comes by default, tick, and there's just an acceptance, and that's obviously a good thing.
And I think regulation needs to move far quicker against certain types of businesses or industries and things like that. And then there needs to be, it's there-ish, but it's sort of just on the outskirts of things. So that needs to be far greater in my view. I mean, obviously some of the changes around sort of compromises and have to be announced, and even things like, I don't know, that needs to be a sort of, obviously there's been talks about around Essential 8 being required for certain industries. That those things need to happen. Insurance is driving it a little bit now as well, where a lot of the questions within insurance things saying, do you have MFA? Is it backed up? Are you encrypted devices? Like those sort of things are driving it, but I think, it still needs to do more.
I mean, look, we both kind of advise in and around the Essential 8 space, and there's NIST and there's other things as well.
Yeah.
I think there's also, Essential 8 for many organizations can be hard to achieve though. And yes, there can be a standard that you could argue that it ought to be difficult to achieve because you actually want to increase maturity and levels of compliance. But also, at times there are some requirements in there that just kind of don't really make sense for some organizations, or are too difficult, or for those organizations that are coming from a legacy perspective, it's too costly and too hard. And I think sometimes I absolutely agree the need for frameworks, and we are proponents of Essential8. We help organizations achieve that as well. But there also needs to be a pragmatism around what an organization can achieve as well. And I think some of the auditing bodies don't necessarily appreciate that. And that's some of the sense that I get, but I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need to always put things in if the business doesn't need it. You could take elements of Essential8 or NIST or whatever it may be. Yeah. And again, it's associating or understanding the client's risk appetite as well.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it comes down from the board and it has to filter down. So, I mean, you could meet a business that's turning over 5 mil and their risk appetite is extremely high and they want everything. Whereas you could go to a business that's turning over 100 mil and they're like, yeah, you can identify the risk, but they're happy to take that risk. So it's understanding that, but then also at the same point, you could go to a $5 million business and recommend to put $5 million worth of security in, and a user can still click on the link and then they can get compromised. So it's finding that happy balance.
So talking about Essential8 then, and we're talking about client education and client understanding and appreciation of these kind of frameworks and the need for security. How difficult or easy is it to actually extol the benefits of Essential8 with clients? How much knowledge do you think clients have, or how easy or difficult is it to implement Essential8 with clients?
I mean, each client is on a different journey and a different maturity level, even before you get to you talk about in like infrastructure, or a different maturity level from that. So I think it starts with, does the business need it for a certain requirement? I mean, if there is, then that obviously drives an element of urgency in it, or forward thinking or planning. And then it might be the ones that then you start talking about it, and then you just got to let them sort of sit on it and think about it. And then next year they might sort of then a conversation might pop out from like a previous discussion. So, and then some don't sort of show any interest in it at all. And I think there's a lot more sort of being publicized around it. And I think in Essential8 obviously doesn't cover all important factors, but it sort of starts people thinking along that sort of that frame of mind and the requirements. And to be honest, within 365, you can sort of cover majority of those off pretty easily. With just a security uplift in 365. Obviously, there's complexities that come in when you've got on-prem and other things as well. But when you're sort of talking specifically cloud first, it's relatively easy within 365's sort of environment.
Yeah. And on that, actually, one thing I'd be interested to know of your clients, what would you say the split is between those that are on, say, Microsoft 365 and those that are on Google? Do you have?
I think, our sort of ideal client profile is 365. So we sort of generally turn clients down that don't have 365 unless they're moving to 365, and then we'll do the migration for them. So I think we've probably just got one out of our sort of client base at this point in time.
Yeah, and I could quite appreciate that. I think many of the serious businesses, Microsoft 365 is the kind of de facto standard, really, isn't it? How do you see? So when people are on Microsoft 365 and they've got their emails working through there, they may have SharePoint or documents or what have you working through there. To what extent do you think clients understand what the breadth of the Microsoft 365 platform can offer? Do you find that clients are leveraging the automation features in 365 and things like that? Or do you think there's a gap there? There's an education gap that people or clients don't realize what else can be done with 365?
There's definitely a gap. And I mean, we're still trying to learn it ourselves, to be honest, because typically like an MSP would be infrastructure, help desk, hardware. So as a modern day MSP, you've got to sort of transition to, and I think we've spoken previously around sort of talking around process and sort of business efficiencies, and that's leveraging things like Power Automate and sort of Power BI from a data perspective, or Power Apps. So there's things that we need to talk about. We don't have the skill set fully internally yet, but it's certainly on our roadmap to be able to do that along down the line. But it's engaging with partners like yourself to be able to sort of help facilitate some of that skill set that we don't have. But this also starts with having the right conversations from our clients and with our clients from a technical business review perspective. And knowing where they're going, what their pain points are, where they're, and there's no, and again, from an account management perspective, our sort of technical business reviews aren't there to say, do you know what, the password reset wasn't done quick enough. That's the service is a given within an MSP. So going back a few years ago, 100% of our managed service revenue was 100% service, whereas now it's probably sort of 60% service, and then the rest is it's sort of 40% is account management, lifecycle management, roadmaps, budgeting, and talking at a board level to understanding their pain points. And hopefully we've got things that, or partners that we've engaged with, or can we do stuff internally? So again, it sort of switches it to far more proactive, because IT isn't slowing down, businesses aren't slowing down, and to be able to keep sort of evolving and maturing, and obviously looking at profit margins within the business or growth, you've got to keep evolving quickly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, we took the view about 2.5 years ago that when we'd moved to the Microsoft platform probably about 4 years ago. We started off on Google very early on and realized that actually, when I was like starting out myself, it was started out with Google. And I think we had maybe 1 or 2 people, but we had 2 staff members, maybe 3 on Google. Then we decided to move to Microsoft. And that was because the kind of clients that we wanted to have were all on Microsoft. So we thought, why wouldn't we? And then it was probably one of the best things that we did at the time. But then we also went a little bit further, because we were going into businesses doing health checks and roadmaps like what you're saying. And we were saying, oh, you should automate that. Oh, you should digitize that. This is about, as I say, 3 years ago. And we made the decision to really kind of go with the Microsoft 365 Power Up platform, because we saw the advantage that if people are actually spending their licenses, 100 people companies, 200 people companies, and then they've got the opportunity then to really leverage that licensing and do more with the Microsoft platform. We saw it being a no-brainer. The reason why I asked the question is because what I find is that companies know that actually you can do more with it. You can automate, you can build apps on it, but they don't really know how or why or how it fits together. So we put together some training and materials on that we do. But what we're starting to find now is with that we just recently did, and this brings the kind of last few points together. We just recently did a piece of work. It took about a couple of months to develop a technology roadmap for an organization that is on the Google platform or has already made the decision to move to Microsoft. It was before we even got introduced to them. And they specifically wanted to know, given that we're moving to Microsoft 365, how do we do more with it? And so now we're in the position whereby we've developed a roadmap for them, not just with the services that, like the Microsoft services, when at which points to actually implement them and how to implement them from a governance perspective, but actually what you can do to build apps that replaces, give or take, 50 to 60 spreadsheets. And with that, they're coming from a low level of maturity, but there's so much that can be done in that space that I think it's really important that education piece and anyone who's watching this, it's important that there's a realization that so much can be done. It's not just your emails and your SharePoints and documents and what have you, and also security. There's actually so much automation and business value that can be got there. And I think that is something that clients of yours and ours, should really kind of lean into. But are you seeing that happening at the moment?
I mean, I always sort of, when I talk to people, there was one way to do, there was only one way to do everything. That was a few years ago. Now there's a million different ways to do one thing, and it's trying to find what's best for the businesses, the environment, the expertise internally. So, and obviously their costs. So it's just definitely it's getting down to the root cause of what the issue is, and you can always sort of go and track back from that using the tool set that you have. And sometimes it might be bringing in an additional tool set, or like you say, it might be within the tool set that you already have. And then, like I say, just getting something out there and playing with it, and then just evolving and building on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose just switching up a little bit, you mentioned I think you said something like services are given, like some of the basic IT service support is kind of a given these days. Yeah. So how do you, as Inspired IT, how do you go beyond fixing just, the basic issues or responding to those issues to truly add value to client businesses?
Good question. I mean, there's multiple parts of that. I mean, I feel like we've got a very good modern day approach to sort of a managed service. So inclusions of security, technical business reviews, whether it be, it's not just about help desk support. So we include that into our managed services. And obviously having a good security baseline is critical to having a good managed service nowadays, and trying to utilize external third-party products and putting them in. So it's forever evolving. And I mean, we're continually reviewing, do we have the best products within our managed service? Do we, like I say, having projects aside to that is one thing, cyber as a service is another thing. Then you have your business process. So we're sort of starting to get our teeth into that. Obviously, you've got AI, Copilot, generative AI. Then that brings a whole nother question around where your data sits and data governance and data compliance. So that's a whole nother question. And I think every business is still learning that and trying to understand it because it's moving so quickly. So I think we're all learning, because as an IT business, we get the same updates at the same time as everyone else. So we're sort of playing catch up as well. And as we all know, that technology speed is increasing. So it's, yeah.
I suppose with the AI question, because that was actually going to be one of my next questions, have you seen any like negative impacts from people doing AI where, like, you know, they've kind of like maybe avoided security, broken security, or negative consequences of any of your clients using AI?
I haven't. I mean, you can certainly see elements of AI around social media posts or marketing materials and things like that, or maybe sort of through LinkedIn posts, which I love LinkedIn, and you sort of see a lot of that. But I think I look at it and go, internally, how much it's improved us. I mean, you think back where sort of Google, how much you can sort of makes me a better IT owner by Googling, and GPT or Copilot's made me far better and more streamlined and advanced in what I'm doing. And it's I think you've got to use it. You've got to understand it. Obviously, prompting is a skill set within itself that I'm still sort of trying to learn. And I was playing with a GPT app the other day to maybe potentially help some of our quoting terms or something like that. So there's things that I'm just playing with, and hopefully we can sort of share that with some of the businesses that we talk with, or clients that we have. But there certainly has to be an element of investment in the budgets, I think, for sort of AI and, like I say, Copilot, and adding that in. But it also doesn't start with just enabling the Copilot license as an example. It's where your data is, what permissions you got in your data, and that governance aspect, because you also don't want your whole team to have access to a file that they don't necessarily know they've got, but they search for it and AI absorbs it. So, yeah.
And you mentioned a good point around governance, because that's obviously a field that we play in significantly, you know, with clients. And we had, or still do with a number of clients, is really have to address the notion of how to govern teams with shared documents and things like that, and what have you. And many organizations, especially during COVID, and organizations are a little bit more savvy now, but you know, but there are still some organizations that let people just go and do whatever with teams without the level of governance. I think like AI is going to be like that, but turbocharged, where people will go click happy and okay, let's enable it, that, you know, and then people are doing various things that without really thinking about what the output is. For me, I think there's two main kind of channels of AI. One is personal productivity, like spell checking, or, you know, helping with ideas for a document or something like this, and you know, your personal kind of thing. And you still need to know that actually what it's bringing back to you is actually valid. So you still need to have knowledge in that space. I think the other side of AI is like the generative side and things like that, and the things that can like crunch data very quickly and almost, you know, bleeds into the operational from a holistic level, where it's like trying to give insights over your data. Before you can do that effectively, you need to control and secure and own your data first, and have those platforms. And talking about 365, things like the Microsoft Fabric, I think, will come to the fore with Dataverse and things like that. And I can imagine that being the next big governance ground that organizations are going to have to really think about, is how do we govern our data so that we can run whatever Copilot or whatever over it. Do you see that in the same way, or do you have a different kind of view?
It is. I mean, it opens a minefield. And like I say, as a business the size as I am, I can't have all those expertise internally. So this is where I'm looking at and going, do you know what? It has to be partnerships with people that can do a good job in that particular area. So then again, I'm looking at it from sort of my client side. Well, do you know what? When our clients partner with us, they're not just partnering with us, they're also partnering with our network to individuals that we use and we know that and trust. So it's going to be an interesting one and how it grows. I mean, I've sort of gone through quite a few events recently, and obviously talk about the growth of managed services. Then you've got cyber, then you've got your AI, and where's it going to go next? Who knows? But what I've got to do is keep evolving, inspired, because I don't want to stay static. I'm not going to be a thought leader or anything like that, but we'll just be just slightly behind that first wave if we can, and we've got to keep evolving. And like I say, one of the sort of didn't touch on it before, but one of our growth sort of elements is running EOS internally, so around having that structured process, and that helps us having those good leadership discussions and yearly planning discussions, and sort of also chatting to other people in who run MSP businesses, or finding like for like people that you can sort of bounce off, and hopefully I become the average of that room if I can find some amazing people. So it's just learning from people, chatting and sharing, because there's enough work out there ultimately for
good organizations. Absolutely. And so look, you touched on a question I was about to ask, but I'm going to re-ask it anyway. How do you see the MSP industry evolving over the next 2 to 5 years, say?
Starts with, I think, certainly the account management and sort of understanding process. And I think it also starts with, we're going to be chasing $5 million revenue and we need 12 employees for that. I think sort of go, well, what can we do with 6 employees to get you to 5 mil? So it's those sort of questions I think that we sort of got to start doing. And I think we're sort of coming in more at a business process perspective, or because say we've got a lot of knowledge of sites and going into customers, and it's just getting those sort of things. I mean, like I say, security is certainly growing, and we've got to be on the forefront of that and keep evolving and growing our security stack and sort of doing things by best practice and best effort and all that sort of stuff. So it's I mean, security. Like I say, I think I said before, service is almost a given. Security is an element of it. Then it's going process efficiencies, modern day approaches to businesses.
Yeah, and so there's a lot in that, and so when you onboard a new client, what are the key challenges that you have? I mean, I obviously understand you will have a checklist and an onboarding form, but and aside from going through the process of onboarding, what are typically the challenges that you have when maybe they're an ideal client profile, maybe they're not, but typically what are the challenges that you look out for when onboarding a new client?
I think a lot of businesses look for an MSP to guide them. I don't think that's necessarily right. I think it needs to be done either via a CISO or something like that, and then we come in and then act upon what is required for the business. So we can add content, but we need to be told where the business is going and what their clear plans are, and then we can then design that solution and move forward with them and help put them in that position. Does that answer?
Yeah, it does. And actually, one of my questions was going to be, what's the difference between, for your view of the difference between an IT support company and, say, a strategic IT consultancy like Cohesis? And I think I'll have a go at answering it first, and you tell me what you, because I think you touched on something there that I think is really important, and it's the fact that when you say that clients want guidance because they don't really know, and it's not necessarily for you to give them that guidance, it has to come from the business. And I think that fundamentally is correct. Where we tend to help clients is to help them understand what the business should be telling IT or asking IT support companies to do. And typically the gap between that is IT governance. So when a business has and this is like a topic close to my heart, I know we've spoken about this as well, but when a company engages an a client engages an IT support company and they don't really know what they want, so will just tell us. Well, then that doesn't really help, because the business itself needs to know, what's the business plan? What is, like what you do with your business, where's the business going? What do we need from IT? And therefore having a governance framework, which is, okay, what risks are we willing to take? What's our risk tolerance? What do our backups and business continuity look like? What's our cybersecurity policy? What are we going to allow people to do? Are we going to allow them to have their own devices, or are we going to just mandate corporate devices? What level of risk tolerance? And then those documents mean that everyone's on the same page, which means that they can engage an IT support company and say, this is what we need. And yes, it may flex a little bit because you may say, well, that's unrealistic, or this is going to cost you too much, and they can dial it back a little bit. But there should be a starting point where the client is fundamentally educated, or at least in the zone, about what it is that they're asking for IT support. And I see that disconnect quite a lot. And part of what we do is to try and help, obviously, put that education, documentation, and ICT governance, risk management in place. And I think that then helps IT support companies to be able to respond better to that. But that's my answer to the question. What's yours?
Yeah, it does. I mean, you're approaching it in a non-technical way, whereas an MSP is going to approach it in a technical manner. So, I mean, I always bring it back to sort of backup as a service or a disaster recovery solution. If they go, oh, we need a disaster recovery solution, I'm like, right, and that's where it stops. I'm like, sure, we can. However, if I'm having a document saying, right, this is how long we need to, this is how long we can afford to be down for. We need these servers or this infrastructure online within an hour. You can sort of design the backup the solution for that outcome. So it helps, because otherwise then I'm sort of, you're always, you're never getting the right solution, and they're probably not getting the right solution either. Certainly we can ask those questions, but someone like yourself and your business and those sort of people can get those answers far better, because we're approaching it from a technical perspective.
I agree with that. And we don't do the work that you do from that technical perspective. We're very much around the strategic side, but it's where the two cross over, I think, is super important. And I think the clients that really get it, and they really see the value of it. And I think there's an education kind of gap with some clients that they just don't realize that there's that missing piece sometimes. But anyhow, that's interesting for me, at least, anyway. So next question will be, as you've mentioned, there's a lot to IT support. There's many different facets, from a technical, from AI, from security. And it's like the field grows every year. There's more to know every year, or as time goes on, different from when you probably started your business 9 years ago. How easy would you say it is to get into IT support today? And I don't necessarily mean starting a business necessarily, but just as a technician or what have you, how easy or difficult is it to get a foothold?
So, it's relatively easy. I think it's a low barrier. I mean, I personally went straight from school into IT support. So I fell into a really good help desk, and then I got into quite a lot of projects, and then sort of just moved through the ranks that way. I think clouds made it far easier, because I think going back as well, I think a few years ago, IT, you had to be a geek to get into it, whereas now you don't, and personal skills certainly outweigh a lot of that sort of technical aspect, and it's about how you deal with people and communicate with people. I mean, Google has certainly helped from a technical aspect. So, and again, you can sort of go through KB articles or ChatGPT as well, or I've read. So there's, I don't know if that answers your question. It is easier. I think you've got to keep up with it. It's it keeps evolving, and it's not going to stop. And you've just got to, I have a passion for it. I enjoy it. But there's so many different elements to IT, and some of it just goes well over my head. It's just,
I mean, when I look at, because as you know, I sometimes get asked to help clients select IT support companies and what have you. And when we look at this, and we look at the capabilities and the qualifications of IT support technicians, the number of qualifications that are, that you kind of like need to have and look to have, it's a massive list. So, I mean, I kind of agree with you in the sense that you don't need to be as geeky, maybe, if that's the, kind of right term, from what we needed to be ages ago. And you kind of really needed, like, to be, into it, as it were. Whereas today you can learn it, and you don't necessarily, I think there's an easier pathway. But to be good, you really need to continue that education, and you really need to get the qualifications, because when clients are looking for IT support companies, They're looking for the ones that actually can prove that they know the stuff in terms of how to implement, let's say, Microsoft 365 or whatever else it may be. So you need to be Microsoft certified in whichever way, or what have you. So that's kind of my view on it, is that it's kind of like mixed. It's a little bit easier in some ways, but there's a lot more to learn and to kind of like really, really have the qualifications. You need the badges, basically, I would say.
You do. I mean, again, it also changes. I mean, the amount of feature and roll-ups that you get over the course of 3-6 months, and sometimes I've gone out to demo things and like it wasn't there yesterday, and then the client asks, "Oh, what's this new feature?" I'm like, "No idea." So you've got to have it's like a passion for it, and I think, and again, sort of come back to another question: someone's internally has to drive the sort of IT side and have a passion for it. Ultimately, if you're not doing it, then your competitors doing it, and does that make them better, faster, more efficient? Can they grow quicker? So you've got to sort of utilize it as much as you can, and obviously it's having a good budget aside for it to be able to sort of and just again comes back to writing down plans and having things down on a business plan and going after it and just striving to achieve it.
Yeah. And for someone who's looking to get into IT support, to have a career in IT support, what advice would you give?
Just start playing. That's how I learned. Yeah, just I mean, in the evenings I used to do it, or I used to, again, some of the things that I used to do when I was younger was in sort of help desk, and there was projects that went on, and I would just sit and watch out of my own time and just absorbed it, and that's the only way you can sort of get that experience. I mean, obviously YouTube's around, so I mean, I still an avid watcher of YouTube for certain parts, and can pick up parts from that. So and then you've got sort of other areas. I mean, again, sort of some good prompting in ChatGPT can make you an expert within 20 minutes on certain topics. So it's those sort of things. It's just trying to sort of pull in that lot of data and sort of sticking it again every year. I sort of set goals, what I need to learn every year or want to learn, or an interest, not necessarily in IT, maybe it's personal. And I just sort of set those goals every year and spend that investment in it.
Yeah. I mean, I know I completely agree with that. You've got to have a passion for it. You've got to want to learn. I mean, I never went down the IT support route. I was a software developer when I first kind of, cut my teeth in the professional world. But that began because I just had a love of how does code work? How do you write code? And I wanted to know. And I'm probably show my age now, but because I'm older than you. But back in the day on the Spectrum 48Ks, there was a program that I copied out of a magazine that was a triangle that spun to make a circle. And I did that and it worked. And I saw this happen. Right, the Spectrum 48K only had 8 colors, but I did this and I was just hooked from that point, And yeah, so it was like copying programs out of magazines till making my own programs and stuff. Not IT support, and I digress, but I completely agree that you have to have a passion and you have to want to get into it. And I suppose I was more of a developer that just wanted to hide away in a room. Whereas I suppose if you want to be an IT support person, you have to really want to help people, speak to people, and be prepared to do that.
You do, but I mean, both our businesses are a service business, so ultimately it's servicing people. So I think people, a lot of people underestimate the power to be able to communicate and look people in the eye when they talk and sort of communicate at a good level. Because again, sort of in the past, like IT generally be locked in a dark room and then they're sitting behind the computer. But it's changed. You've got to be able to sort of talk and it sort of go out and chat to people face to face. And I still like that face to face. And I think that's probably been part of my sort of growth trajectory, is that I've been able to go out and chat to people and I can understand some of their frustrations in IT or what they're looking to achieve and break that down in a good manner, compared to somebody, like I say, always got told you don't go out and sell the tech, you sort of sell the solution. So again, that's another key point.
And I may also add to that in many of the conversations I have where we talk about IT support companies, one of the things that winds people up a lot is the fact that, we may have a problem. Yes, they may fix it. Yes, they may not, but we don't see people. It's like, and there's a lot of appreciation for when clients actually see somebody turn up or what have you, or they have the FaceTime, they can talk and what have you. And that's also important as well, is that yes, technology is great, but actually human contact and actually discussing problems and sitting down and really understanding what clients need and are looking to achieve. And I know that you know this, but it is super important,
It is. I mean, people buy from people. So, and that's where, I mean, ultimately any business is a sales business. So without sales, you're not growing. So ultimately you've got to go out and sell, and hopefully there's enough sort of numbers in there to be able to, like, say, if you're going to see 10 people, generally you'll probably get 2 or 3. So then it's a numbers game, and there's enough competition out there, which is a good thing. I love competition because it makes us better, but also there's enough people out there to find, and they might bounce off me, or they might bounce off with another managed service provider, and as long as they can get the right need that they need for their business, then great.
Absolutely. So I asked you about if someone was starting a career in IT, what advice you give. What about people who may be looking to start an IT service company? Any takeaways? Any pills of wisdom for those people?
Nah, just go for it and give it a crack. And I think you mentioned around it, I'd rather know than not know. So again, we've only got sort of one life, and one thing I have learned actually is, and I always thought when I was younger, I thought a lot of people knew what they were doing, but most people I've met are winging it along the way, because it's forever evolving and changing. Yeah. And I mean, again, I read Richard Branson's book, and it sort of says like he's gone, say yes, and you figure it out later. And it maybe doesn't need that full-on approach, but there is an element of that because it's the unknown. I mean, no one's lived in 2025 before 2026, so with this technology, so we're all trying to figure out what's best, and certainly it needs hunger and passion to keep evolving and challenging it. But if someone's really thinking about it, like, you've got to have another. Well, actually, common sense is probably a good thing to start with, and then just give it a go. You've got to have a strong work ethic, I think, but you also got to enjoy it, because being a business owner as well, you're going to put in a lot more hours in than you think. So ultimately, that passion has to come from somewhere. And if you're sitting at 10 p.m. or midnight working, that hunger's got to come from somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And as someone once said to me, especially when starting a new business, it's not what you do during the 9 to 5. It's what you do between the 5 and 9, when you're actually setting things up, because it's a lot of, you need passion to actually drive through, to actually not just work in the business, but work on the business as well. And I think that's also important.
But you also need to know where that vision is. So again, there's no point not having an endpoint or a vision, because otherwise then you're probably making something that doesn't align with where you're going in the future. So sort of having an endpoint and a growth strategy, or where you want to achieve that sort of is a good thing, because then you make those conscious decisions just based on where you're going as an outcome. So
yeah, and I suppose as Simon Sinek would say, find your why kind of thing first and let that drive.
Yeah, I've struggled with that why. I don't know what my why is. I mean, I certainly like helping people. I want businesses to help achieve businesses. But yeah, I struggle with that a little bit. What is my why? But obviously, I feel like I've got that why, but I've never really nailed it. But like I say, I've got a lot of hunger.
Yeah, I know, indeed. And one last thing then, I really enjoyed the conversation, Matt. We always have good chats whenever we talk. Where can people find you? If someone wanted to reach out to you, how can they find you?
Probably the best is the website. So www.inspired-it.com.au, and there's a book me form which goes directly to me. So that's probably the best way, to be honest. Or info@inspired-it.com.au. Again, that will come through to me. So yeah, feel free. And I say I'm always up for a coffee and a chat. I just love meeting new people, and yeah, just always happy to pass on any experience or my viewpoint.
Perfect. And so look, as I say, really enjoyed the chat, Matt, and thank you for your time. If you enjoyed this conversation, please like and share it within your network or on your favorite podcast app. We are here to try and help inform and deliver a broad range of business insights to help business leaders like yourselves make better decisions. If you would like to appear on the podcast or for us to address a particular topic, then please contact me at leadersloungepodcast@cohesis.com.au, or you can contact me directly at simon.cohen@cohesis.com.au. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.